In today's video, we're painting a fun, beginner-friendly avocado painting that's perfect for building confidence and experimenting with colour. As well, you're invited to join me as we explore a fresh, personal way of mixing beautiful natural greens in watercolour using a range of blues and yellows. Whether you're new to watercolour or looking for inspiration to break out of a rut, this is a gentle, rewarding project to get your brushes moving. So let's get started. And I'm going to be talking to you about mixing greens and not mixing greens, and I'm going to be showing you some new ideas that you may not have come across before, because I haven't come across them before either. First thing I want to say, though, is that today we are 3/4 of the way through our challenge of the World Watercolor Month. We are now on day 24, so there's one more week to go. And for members of our Patreon or on here on YouTube, there are already 23 very special and I hope interesting videos available for you, completely exclusive to you as a member. And I'm just showing you here the 2 items which we designed for World Watercolor Month, which you can get from Charlie O'Shields. If you go to Doodle Wash, you can purchase these, which all is in aid of the charity that he founded, for the children around the world who are underprivileged and have no art materials or any art teachers or anything. So that's all a very good cause. So I just wanted to remind you about that. These are rather lovely, aren't they? Yes, and there are other designs as well for you to buy. We don't make anything out of that. That's all charity. So you know, whatever you spend, it goes to the kids. Okay, so today's challenge is avocado. So hence I've got all these greens lying here on my notebook here. And here comes the fighter jet. Sorry about that. There they go. Green is a very, what you could call, controversial colour. And some people say you should only ever mix your greens. Some people say you might as well use them out of the tube. And I want to tell you about my history of green. When I first started painting, I had a very basic set of paints, and you can still buy basic sets of paints, and they have within them 2 yellows, 2 blues, 2 reds, and 2 neutrals usually, and then black and white, something like that. Maybe you might get a purple if you're lucky. That meant you might get 1 green, but it would probably be Viridian. Now that meant that if you wanted natural greens, you had to mix them. And it's still the case. If that's the way you start painting, which is the way I started painting, that's the way it is. And that's fine, because that way you learn how the colours go together, you know, what they do when they get involved with each other. But over the years, I have acquired more greens, and here are some of them in tubes, which are my recent acquisitions. Lucky me, I've got Jackman's and Michael Harding here, and I'll talk about them in a minute. But over the years, I acquired these, which is my almost complete set of paints in pans, my original ones, going back at least till 1985. And you can see that I've got a whole row of greens. Now, some people say that you can't get a natural green from a premix, but that's not actually true, because some of these colours are quite natural. For example, I think this is an olive green, and I can just try that out here. Let's just try it out on a palette. I mean, I think that's a pretty good start for any leaf. So, you know, you could start with that. That could be sap green, that one. But if you're really adventurous, you might go ahead and pick up something like yellow ochre and mix a little bit in, just to, you know, break the colour a little bit and make it a little bit more realistic. So that's like the beginning of mixing greens. But from there, you can go on to the next row down, and you can say, well, I've got all these blues. And I know full well that if I add all of these yellows and oranges to these blues, I'll get even more greens. And so from this row here, mixed with this row here, you could probably mix 100 slightly different shades of green. Not to mention the fact that the more water you use, the paler it'll be. Or if you use it full strength or quite, you know, mixed with relatively little water, you're going to get a much darker colour. So it can be quite overwhelming at first when you look at something like this and you think, oh, I don't know where to start. So I've kind of devised a sort of method that's based on the idea of painting avocados. And I'm going to show you that in a minute. I'll just quickly show you all of these tube colours though. But I'm going to say that with the exception perhaps of sap green, you don't need any of these. I've got Michael Harding's sap green and I've got Jackman's, and they're probably slightly different. But all these other colours, cobalt teal, you can mix that by taking this and adding blue. Perylene black, you can mix that by taking sap green and adding black. Hooker's green, that's another basic, and that's a good basic green, and you can lighten that up with yellow, you can darken it down with more blue or black. Here's another turquoise. What we call these is convenience colours, and they are that. They are exactly that. If you don't want to waste time mixing lots of colours, then you can use these convenience colours. Here's one called Bright Green Lake. That's a very bright and very yellowish green. You could mix that using yellow with just a tiny bit of blue, and it goes on and on. That's why you don't get all these greens in your set when you buy Winsor & Newton, Sennelier, Schminker, Old Holland, and so on and so forth. When you buy a set from any of those reputable people, you get 12 or 24 with very few greens. On the other hand, though, if you buy a Chinese brand, you will find greens in there, but you'll still want to mix your own special ones. And this is the way we're going to do it today. I'll put my notebook out of the way. We've been filling up our notebook here, this sketchbook, with all sorts of things. Those of you who are members will have been with me on this journey of mixing colours, finding out what went with what and how to get this, that or the other. And all of those lessons are all available to anyone who joins Patreon or YouTube from now on. You can get hold of all of those videos. They're available indefinitely to members. But today we're going to be sharing this one with everyone. So now what do I do? Avocado. How do we make green? What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this mixing palette and I'm going to fill it with different colours. Okay, I'm going to put two yellows in the middle here. I'm going to put a Quinacridone Gold, which is a very quite vibrant reddish gold, I would say. It's not pure yellow. And then I'm going to, if I can find it, put some of this one. This is cadmium yellow. And so we've got the two yellows. And then I have selected some basic blues here. And we've got, so we can start with indigo. I'm going to put indigo here. Okay, it's indigo blue, very dark. And then next to it, I'm going to put French ultramarine. And all of these colours that I'm putting in around here will mix with these to make greens. So then we put cobalt blue. And then we will put Phoenix blue. This is phthalo blue, actually. This is a set of paints from a Chinese manufacturer called Phoenix, which you will probably find online as well. And then, so we've got our four blues. You could try more, but these are kind of the basics. And then I'm going to put some Mars black. Did you know that black and yellow makes green? And then I'm going to put some burnt sienna over here. Okay. I've got 4 spaces there, so if I wanted to try mixing extra colours on top of those ones, or as well as those ones rather, I've got space. So now the way I'm going to organise this, you can see I've been practicing this morning, is I've got my mixing palette here and here, plenty of space if I need it. I've got a reasonably small brush because I don't want to mix large quantities. So this is a size 4 round. Any one will do. Don't use your very best brush for mixing. And I'm going to draw on here a circle like this, and a circle in the middle. And then I'm going to divide it into 6 sections like this. And this is just a fun way of trying out some mixes. So we'll get some water on our brush, and I'm going to start with the cadmium yellow. And for purposes of reference for later, I'm going to paint cadmium yellow in the middle there. And then I'm going to work my way around the colours, and I'm going to do a mixture of cadmium yellow and indigo to start with. Now that's obviously far too much indigo, so I'll wash my brush off and come back into the yellow and start from the other end. And as I move that way, I hope you can see that, yeah. As I move that way, it's going to get darker and darker till we get to a certain point. And then I think, well, that's pretty balanced green around about there. So we'll paint that in here. Now, that's quite a realistic sort of leaf green, and you can obviously change it by adding more of the blue, or you could add some, whoops, not that one. You could add some burnt sienna, which is a good color to add to green to make it more earthy. And then you can mix that again. And then what you could do is you could paint that darker color. So that's the green you get when you add burnt sienna. Add that around the outside edge there to see. You can label it afterwards, or you can label it as you go along. But I can put here indigo and burnt sienna. And so now we know that when we mix this with indigo, we get that color, and then when we add burnt sienna, we get a dulled down version. So let's go to the next one. So we take some more yellow. And the next blue is ultramarine. So we mix those two together, a little bit more water. And this one should be more yellowy, because this blue is lighter, really. It's okay, so that's different. Now, the thing is, when you come to painting something like an avocado, the last thing you want to do is to only use one green. You need lots of them. And you can either mix them beforehand and then paint the avocado with a mixture of them, or you can do what I prefer to do, which is to let the paint mix on the paper. So this is what you get when you mix a bit of burnt sienna in. A softer green. Okay. So this is ultramarine. You could do this really neatly if you wanted to. I'm not doing it very neatly, as you can see, because I'm trying to do it reasonably quickly. So now our third one was cobalt, this one here. And the cobalt green and yellow gives us this color, which is quite similar, but not quite the same to the ultramarine one. And if you add a little bit of burnt sienna, you get this subdued green on the outside edge. Now one more you're going to use phthalo blue. I have to be very careful with that because it's extremely strong. So I'm just going to pick up a tiny bit, maybe a bit bigger than that, a smidge rather than this. Oof, you see how easy it is for that to go completely mad. So we'll do that. Just add some more yellow. And we've got a very synthetic green. I have a hair on my brush. Well, I've got several. This brush seems to be losing hairs. Can't help it, it's getting old. Okay, so that's phthalo green and cadmium yellow. And again, add a little bit of burnt sienna. Now, it wouldn't necessarily have to be burnt sienna that you're adding. You could add any other reddish colour. You could add cadmium, alizarin crimson, or you could add quinacridone rose or permanent rose, or you could add burnt umber or any other reddish brown colour. Now, I'm looking at this and thinking to myself, well, that's clearly the brightest. So you have your synthetic green, your phthalo blue, which is a greenish colour, mixed with the cadmium yellow, which is a very pure yellow, which gives you a very good green, and then adding a little bit of burnt sienna, you've still got quite a clean colour compared to these ones, right? So if you want, you could add a bit more. Yeah, we could add a bit more and see what we get with a bit more brown. So it'll go duller and duller the more brown you add, but it's still green. So that could be one of our best colours for avocado, couldn't it? That would be cadmium yellow, phthalo blue, and burnt sienna. So we'll make a note of that. So that could well be what we use as our base idea. So we could use this yellow, phthalo blue, and burnt sienna to paint our avocado. That's looking like a good blend at the moment. But just for the sake of completion, I'm going to pick up some more yellow. And add a bit of black. And we should get another dark green colour, which also, I mean, I think this is olive green, if ever I saw it. And I think that could well take part in a painting of an avocado, especially if you diluted it down. It could be the colour for the inside. And then we'll add a bit of brown. More yellow. A bit more black. This one's actually quite tricky to mix because it does have a strong tendency to go brown when you add brown. So you've got a very nice shadow colour there. And then finally, the last one was one 3-part mix. Well, that was a 3-part mix on the outside. What was I going to do? I was just going to show you the two colours. That's burnt sienna. And let's try burnt sienna on its own. Burnt sienna on its own with one of our blues. Let's try it with cobalt. I think we're going to get a grey. Greyish brown. And then the other thing I wanted to do was to paint, what was I going to put there? oh yeah, indigo and burnt sienna. Yeah, this is indigo and burnt sienna, which again is also surprisingly nice. Indigo and burnt sienna, and then with a bit more burnt sienna. I'm going to get that. So when you've completed your testing of cadmium yellow with your 4 blues, black and burnt sienna, you can now look at your selection and you can decide which ones to your eye are the best for painting an avocado. And to me, what strikes me probably most is I'm going to not bother too much with ultramarine at this point. I use that a lot, but not necessarily here. I think probably I would be looking to use indigo and burnt sienna, which gives me this, or this one here, which is, indigo and yellow, which is this, and indigo and burnt sienna, which is this, and possibly this one too. Okay, so after having done that, I would write that down, and I would say that my choice was, where shall I put it? I would say indigo, burnt sienna, and this one was phthalo. So that would be one that I would choose, and black, I think, or black obviously. And then I was thinking, I'm not going to go all the way through this again, but I think it's a really good idea to do basically the same thing, but this time with a much duller yellow. And I'll just do one to show you, but this is a good idea because you're going to get, I think, much more muted colors if you use basically what is an orange. This Quinacridone Gold is basically, isn't it, orange. So we could try out Quinacridone Gold and phthalo blue and do the same thing again until you've tried them all out. And it might very well be, phthalo blue was the 4th one, wasn't it? It was here. It might be that you think that starting, as I do, that starting with Quinacridone Gold as your yellow might give you a more subtle result. And if we add our little bit of black, let's say, that's a quite natural colour. So there we are. That's my idea for making a pie chart, basically, to test out your colours, and then you make careful notes, and then you have a good idea of what you can expect when you add this to that or the other. And you can apply the same principle to any colour. You could put a green in the middle here, for example, say, for example, Windsor green, and then you could try mixing it with all these other colours and trying out and seeing what you get. People say they love to swatch, and I think that this is a very productive way of swatching because you're actually learning at the same time how to predict, roughly anyway, what kind of colour you're going to get when you put X with Y. So there's that. And I'm just going to clear my desk, and then we'll come back and we'll have a go at painting a couple of avocados on a tree. Okay, so first of all, we need a little sketch. Now, when you look on, if you go on Tinternet and you look for pictures of avocados, you will find principally, I found, photos of half avocados, let's say avocados cut in half. And that's not what I was looking for. And I've struggled, actually. Now, the reason why I needed to use the internet for this purpose was because I can't eat the things. I used to love avocados. And when I was at college, I used to eat. Why am I doing that? I'm not doing the drawing. When I was at college, I used to have an avocado, half an avocado. I used to share it with someone for my lunch most days. And we used to just put olive oil and lemon juice and salt and pepper inside it and scoop it out with a teaspoon. And that was absolutely lovely. And I adored that. That was back in the, let me see, Tamsin was 3 or 4 years old. So that would have been about 1981, 2, something like that. But as the years went by and I became more and more pathetic, I developed various food allergies. Actually, it was after I had treatment for breast cancer when I was about 46. I developed I started with bananas and I could probably eat an avocado without having an attack of anything, but they don't suit me anymore. So I don't eat them anymore. Consequently, long story short, that's why we don't have any in the house for me to paint from. Because I do try to keep all the things that I'm allergic to at a fair distance. For example, my husband, who likes bananas, is not allowed to eat them, poor man. Anyway, enough of that. So I'm doing a drawing right now, and I will put this drawing on the website for you to have for free if you have Studio Insider's Pass, or if not, you can purchase it for a couple of dollars if you would like to. So I'm just doing leaves. They have fairly long leaves, quite nice, elegant leaves actually. And I'll put another one down here. So there's the basic sketch. I'm not going to go into many details. Now there's about 20 million different ways that you can do this painting. You could do it any way. You can do it my way, you can do it their way, you can do it anyone's way. But one way is to start with an undercoat, a loose, wet undercoat of a colour such as yellow. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do that. I'm going to put cadmium yellow on this one, which I think actually is a little bit too small. I'm going to make him a little bit bigger as I'm looking. I'm thinking, yeah, you know, you actually want to be a bit fatter. It's always good to take a break and look and think, well, I didn't take a break, I just paused and think, is that what I wanted it to be? Because once you've started painting, you can't go back, really. So I think that'll do, and I'll make this one a bit smaller. Just a tiny bit. I'm just not quite happy with that curve. So. And he shouldn't be quite so bulbous down the bottom. But they do come in strange shapes, don't they? Do reassure me of that. Okay, that'll do. Right, so we're going to put cadmium yellow in here, and I'm just going to drop a bit of water into my paint. I'll just check that you can see that, and then I'm using a Drawwell brush here. This is one of their other sort that I don't normally use. It's an SP878, and it's lovely and silky in its approach to the paper. It's really soft and blends. I think it's rather nice, actually. Okay, so then we learnt, didn't we, that we quite liked, if I can find my book, we quite liked cadmium yellow with the indigo. So we could start off by dropping in a bit of indigo. I'll just smoosh that a little bit, and then we'll drop that in down the bottom here, just doing dropping motions like this, and building it up towards the bottom where it's going to be darkest. And we will let that blend. And then we'll clean off our brush and we'll go in for a bit of Quinacridone Gold. I'll put that in here. And then maybe a bit more yellow. And then I'm going to tip it and let the whole thing smoosh around. Hopefully you can see that running. And then we'll do it down the other way. And then when you're sort of kind of vaguely happy that you've got your dark, your mid and your light tones still in existence there, you can go on to do the next one. I'm just going to wet the paper first. And of course that's what happens, but it doesn't really matter. And I'm going to drop in Quinacridone as my starting colour. I mean, we're just having a bit of fun here, guys. So Quinacridone goes in with this lovely, what's the word? What is it when something has a kind of aesthetically pleasing sensation? The brush, it's just so soft. Very nice. And we'll put indigo again down the bottom here, around here. And yeah, a bit of yellow, cadmium, dropped in like that. And maybe a bit of cobalt mixed in with the yellow. And we'll put that up the top. And we could give that a bit of a smush around too. And I think we probably want a bit more dark. So, oof, that indigo is so powerful. Wow. A little bit OTT, I would say. So I'm just going to mix a bit of quinacridone in with that. Get a nice dark green, and then we'll drop that in down here. A bit more. So this is Quinacridone Gold with indigo, giving us a very green. And we go back in here too. This is beginning to dry. Now at this point, it's probably best to go away and leave it to do its own thing. So we will. And I'll take a smaller brush and I'll pick up a bit of green, greeny brown. And we'll paint in the stems, the branches or the twigs, whatever you would like to call them. A little bit of darkness around the top there. Can let that operate. And then we'll dilute it down a bit for this one. And then we'll do the leaves. If you think something's gone a bit too dark, you can lift some of the colour out using your brush, dry. Just dry it off on a piece of tissue. Okay, now I'm going to do the leaves, and I want a nice, clean, lightish colour. So I'm going to start with just yellow for all of them. Put that in first, and then I'm going to put green on top. If you haven't tried Mr. Miami's brushes yet from Japan, handmade brushes that I use a lot, these draw wells, if you feel like you want to invest in a few brushes, there's information below in the description below about how to get them. I'm going to try and just let these colours mix and mingle a little bit. Again, we can lift it out a little bit on one side, for example. We can kind of draw in the shape where the veins would be with the brush a little bit if you want, like that. That will blend back in again, but it does give a sort of impression. And then one of the best ways I know of to make the veins when your paint is wet is to use one of these tools. It's something from China or Japan, which scratches into the paint and will give you a dark line. Generally speaking, sometimes it will give you a lighter line, but either way, it gives you a line which looks like the veins in the leaves. And then after that, we can add a bit more of green, perhaps a little bit like this. And trust me, if it doesn't look the way you really want it to at this point, don't worry about it, because chances are when it's drier, it'll look a lot better. Now I'm going to dry these because I'm going to put one more layer over the top of them. Okay, so that's dry now, and I'm going to take some of this colour here, which is phthalo blue mixed with cadmium yellow and a little bit of black, and I'm going to paint the darkness of the avocado by going over literally the top of what we have already prepared as our under painting. And now we'll let that dry. Okay, so now we have that. And the one thing you could do at this point, if you wanted to, if you feel like you want to spend a lot of time doing something like texture, one way you could do it is you could put a few dots here and there just to kind of break up the surface a bit, because they are kind of very highly textured, aren't they? But you definitely don't need to do that if you don't want to. I have seen some people painting these things all entirely in dots, you know, kind of in the style of Seurat or whatever, just dabbing that off to lighten it up a bit. And you can just kind of leave it like that, or you could put a much lighter few dabs. It's surprising actually how little pigment you need in your brush in order to put colour on top of what you've already got there. So it's not much, and you can give the whole thing a bit more of a lively feel by just coming in with just dabs of, it's not meant to be 100% realistic, but it is meant to be interesting. So if we do that, we can just, with a small brush like this, you can just kind of use some of the colours that you've pre-mixed and you have lying all over the place. You can use some of them up by just giving it some variation in colour like that. And I think that is probably where I'm going to stop and leave you to enjoy your avocado toast. And maybe I'll just put a little bit of extra yellow in over here. If I can find some yellow that isn't green. Okay, that'll do. I've kept the leaves very, very simple because they're not the main job. They're not the main focus. So there we are, there's that. And don't forget the idea of making a colour wheel, especially for studying a particular colour. You could do it for purple as well, or anything else that you care. This was my trial one from earlier. You could do it like that, painting it as a kind of flower. And what I did there was I dragged some of the colour out into the blues that were around the outside edge. And that gives you practice in controlling water as well, which is all very important. This paper didn't take the washes quite so well because it's just sketch paper, but it doesn't really matter, does it? Anyway, so there we are. I'm going to leave you now. I'm going to have my lunch. Managed to get this done just before lunchtime, so that's really good. And I will see you again on Saturday. Don't forget to go to Charlie O'Shield's Doodle Wash website. Information is below on the video. And if you feel like treating yourself and contributing to his charity for children underprivileged around the world, then I think that he would be most grateful. I hope that you feel able to do that. They are nice mugs, actually. We use them all the time. We've got a collection now. This is our 3rd year of doing this. And yes, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to become a member of our Patreon or here on YouTube, we'd be only too happy to have you along for the ride. And believe me, you get plenty of content from us. More than you can cope with. And we'll be talking about August's challenge again soon. One more week on this one to go, and then next month we're going to be starting with a very different approach, something we've done before, but just to sort of take a break, you know, not make it too much of a study session each time you come to see what's up for the day. And so we're just going to relax throughout August because I'm worn out, aren't you? Anyway, I'll let you go and I'll see you soon. Bye for now, everybody. Bye-bye. Hope you enjoy your avocado toast.